and welcome. I am Light, and this is my channel. I've decided to start a new series of segments that will be dedicated to the very, very strange, sometimes frightening stories of the disappearances that are happening by the thousands in the United States national parks, national forest services, and state parks. I am new to the 411 stories, which is oftentimes what they are referred to as, and when I began hearing about these stories, I was fascinated. There are some really strange stories out there about people going missing in our national parks. Another interesting aspect to these segments is that I am going to be collaborating with Robert Burns, and below I will put a link to his page. What's interesting about this collaboration is that I will be doing stories from the United States perspective, and he will be doing stories about these creepy, strange, sad disappearances from the UK perspective. So I'd like to thank him for doing that for us. I think that'll add a little something extra that maybe hasn't been done before or very often. And I really hope that you find these to be as fascinating and interesting as I have. And so every so often we'll be teaming up and doing more segments, and I really hope you like it. And if you do, please let me know. Give a big thumbs up and leave a comment. And if you have opinions, you want to comment, I would love that. Let's have discussions below. All right, well, let's jump into it. In the United States National Park System, there are 84 million acres of preserved woods, deserts, mountains, and other wildernesses, which is not including the state parks. And I think we can imagine that there is more than one reason why a person can or would go missing without a single trace. Perhaps they got lost hiking. Perhaps they wanted to disappear. Maybe they parked their car in the national park and they walked out, never to be heard of again. And that's the way they liked it. Maybe they were washed away down a river or drowned in a lake. There's the obvious that perhaps some people were depressed and went into the forest and maybe committed suicide. And then also another unpleasant truth is that some cases are likely the work of a kidnapper. Maybe some of these people came upon a bear or another creature that wasn't keen on them being there. The area is vast and wild. It's clearly possible that someone could disappear. It seems less likely that there would be zero evidence of them ever found or ever having been there. But, like I said, the area is vast and untamed. But then there are stories that seemingly make no sense at all. Trained military personnel who simply vanish while leaving behind their belongings, which clearly showed that they had every intention of returning. Trained hikers and tour guides gone, missing without a trace. Today I'm going to do a few cases that involved children who were simply with their families, hiking or on a vacation, and disappeared. The first of these cases was a 3-year-old boy who to this day is known as John Doe. His story is arguably one of the strangest and most baffling cases to date. I'm going to tell you a story, and you can decide what you think. John Doe, who, as I said, was just a 3-year-old boy, when he was last seen near a fly fishing river, and suddenly he disappeared for 5 hours. A search party found him. He was dazed. He wasn't harmed. And he was in the middle of a grove of trees. The strange part of this case was the story that this child had to tell of what happened to him over the course of those 5 hours. When asked by investigators about the event, he claimed to have followed a woman who looked like his grandmother to a mountain, where he ended up in a room. According to his account, in the room were inactive robots, and on the dusty floor, it was littered with several types of weapons. He then went on to tell of how the woman had a strange glow coming from her head, and that she, oddly, asked him to poop on a piece of paper, and when he refused, he claimed that she became very angry. The boy said that the woman then told him that he was from somewhere in outer space, and that he had been, quote, planted in his mother's womb. Then this woman told him to leave the room immediately and go into the trees where he would be found. Now, anyone who has spent any time with a small child knows that they can come up with some pretty outrageous stories. However, in this case, there is something bizarre that lends credence to this child's story. His grandmother, who had gone camping with them, claimed that she had been dragged out of her tent late at night. She said that she had woke up to strange pain in the base of her neck, and there they found 2 small holes on the back of her head. So, what happened to John Doe? We may never know the exact events, but is it possible that the explanation here does lie in the extraterrestrial? That's up to you to decide. Another story about a child, a 4-year-old boy, whose name was Alfred Hertz. And this case happened in 1938, while the boy was vacationing with his family in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. His parents were keeping a keen eye on the boy as they took a quick hike near a river, which is when he quickly and without a trace vanished from his parents' side. His story is also one of the stranger stories of missing people in the national parks. There was a 6-mile search of the area where Alfred disappeared, and nothing was found. Bloodhounds were called in, and they traced his scent 500 feet uphill from where he was last seen. The search party, however, was unable to find even one footprint of the boy, and when the bloodhounds reached the top of the peak, they became confused, started sniffing around and whining. They were unable to find his scent any longer, and they couldn't go any further. They eventually laid down and could not continue their search. I think the most shocking part of this story is the addition that 2 hikers claimed to have seen this boy, Alfred, only minutes after his parents claimed to have last seen him. However, they were 6 miles away. They claimed that the boy seemed very dazed and confused, And he was in a particularly dangerous area, which is also hard to reach. It's known as the Devil's Nest. They told investigators that suddenly, as they were looking at him, it appeared as if the boy was jerked backwards by an unseen force. I think we can agree that it's not reasonable or logical to believe that a 4-year-old boy traveled 6 miles uphill over 3,000 feet on his own within a couple of minutes. Even the expedition crew that was needed to go see if they could find the boy, they needed specialized equipment to even look for him. He was never found again. So the question remains, what happened to Alfred? Who or what force jerked this 4-year-old boy from the view of these hikers? We may never know, as this child was, like I said, never found, and this case remains unexplained and mysterious. I don't know if there's an interview with the hikers anywhere that can be found, but I think it'd be very interesting to read what they have to say, what their opinion was, what they were thinking at the time that they saw this. That would be a very interesting take on this story. My next and final case is the case of Dennis Martin, which is, from what I heard, probably the most famous of the national park's missing persons cases. In 1969, Dennis was a 6-year-old boy, and he was vacationing with his family in the middle of the Great Smoky Mountains. He was at a popular spot called Spence Field. While his parents were talking to another camper, Dennis and his brother, along with 2 other children, decided that they would play a prank on their parents. The plan was to hide behind some trees, and then they would jump out to scare their parents, which, if you have ever been a child yourself or know children, that is a game as old as time. It's not unusual or even scary most times. But this time, 3 children went one way and Dennis went another way. 3 children jumped out, and 6-year-old Dennis was never seen again. 6 miles away, a young boy began screaming, and he claimed to have first thought that he saw a bear. But then upon getting a better view, he said what he saw was what he thought was possibly a very large man carrying something slung over its shoulder. A desperate search party started within minutes, almost immediately, but no trace of Dennis was ever found. The search party went on into the night, but they had to stop when it began to rain very, very hard, and any scent that was being picked up by the bloodhounds was lost. Quickly in the following days, the FBI, the Green Berets, the police, the U.S. Special Forces, and just about every other form of official aid was called in and dispatched to find Dennis Martin. No footprints, no articles of clothing belonging to him were ever found. Now, what takes this story to an even more bizarre level is how the government responded to this particular case. First, the head of the FBI's crew that organized the search committed suicide for unknown reasons after the search. Then, Harold Cleveland, who was a member of the U.S. Special Forces, issued a statement to News of the Weird in 2014. And in this statement, he claims to believe that something possibly paranormal or particularly frightening had to have occurred to this boy. And I'm going to read you his statement. Here is his statement. Our special forces are never called to assist in civilian operations. That falls to the local National Guard and approved by the state governor. The fact that they were armed as well is another huge no-no. During my command and every other mission I was aware of, we were not allowed by federal protocol to do either, which is to participate in a search and to carry a weapon. Something is very wrong with this missing kid scenario. I've done some research on this case, both while on active duty and after my retirement. The inside facts of this case depict a frightening investigation. The bottom line is that searching started within a few minutes of the boy's disappearance and lasted 3 months, with every resource imaginable being deployed. Don't even start with the terrain was difficult, holes and caves and cliffs and creeks, etc. Our special troops can find almost anything, anytime, in any terrain. We have the highest technology available worldwide, and easily the best training and real-world wartime and mission-specific experience that the normal civilian populace can scarcely imagine. After studying this case, the fact that no trace of the boy was ever found is mind-boggling. The Green Berets that were tasked in this search were there for a specific reason. They were armed for a specific reason. I can't and won't say why because my oath documents won't allow it, but I will remind you of these facts. Nationwide, there have only been 4 occasions where the special forces were brought in on a civilian missing persons case. 2 of these involved a possible armed perpetrator. The other 2 were this case and another similar to it about 3 years later and regionally nearby. This is out of the thousands of missing cases since the early 60s when our special troops were born. So, with that statement in mind, what on earth could have occurred with Dennis Martin that could explain such a response? Could it be extraterrestrial? Something that the federal government knows to be living in that area? Whatever it was that they believe happened, they believed it to be dangerous and frightening enough to require armed special forces troops. That, to me, is unimaginable. And maybe it's better that way. Neither his family nor us will probably ever know or be allowed to know what happened to a 6-year-old child who disappeared in one of America's largest national parks. Thank you for listening. Up next is Robert Burns with his cases, so please stay and listen. Like I said, if you have any comments, please leave them below. And if you're not subscribed, I ask that you do that if you enjoy this content and if you like this video. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank Exit Light for giving me the opportunity to work with her. I'm a big fan. I'm going to talk today about abductions, alien abductions. And I'm going to look at it from the UK point of view because obviously I'm from the UK. I'm going to look at 2 cases today that happened in the first one happened in 1990 in Dorset, which is just down the road really from Cornwall, so it's in my neck of the woods. It happened in September to a gentleman called James Millen and his wife Pam Millen. They were camping in September, which in the UK is really, really cold, and there's not really much going on at campsites in September. So they decided to go to bed early. James woke up at about 3 o'clock, 5 to 3, he thinks it was about 5 to 3, to go to the loo. When he got outside of the tent, he noticed 4 orange, yellowy, gold lights in the sky, dancing about in the sky. So he shouted to his wife to wake up and come outside of the tent to watch. There was no sound. It was silent. In fact, everything was really, really calm. The lights almost made them feel calm, gave them a sort of mesmerised them, is the words that they used. I don't know if it was some kind of hypnotic thing with the lights, but anyway. One thing they can recall is they both felt really, really happy. Now, if someone woke me up at 5 to 3 in the morning, I probably wouldn't be happy at all, but that's probably just me. Now, what could the lights have been? 4 orange, gold lights dancing around in a field. What could they be? James then went to get his camera to take some photographs. And the next thing Pam remembers is being back in the tent, looking out. Then James came back into the tent and he said, "They've gone now," as matter of fact as if he was talking about their best friend, not 4 lights in the sky. Then Pam was a smoker, she noticed a number of cigarette ends or cigarette butts on the floor, and she couldn't remember smoking that amount. As far as they were concerned, a few minutes had passed. But then they realised that 3 hours had actually gone by. They'd actually lost 3 hours of time. So they went to bed and they got up and they thought, maybe the next day they just imagined everything. But then things started to come back to them. They started to remember certain aspects of what had happened. James remembers being in a circular room with figures, big tall figures all dressed in white, and he said that they had masks over their face, white masks. At no time did James feel threatened. He felt happy, he felt calm. Even to this day, him and his wife think that it was a positive experience. Not everybody who gets abducted feels this way. It's not always a positive experience. Now, I have looked at it from a science point of view, and in relation to this case, a Dr. David Lewis, who is a psychologist, he thinks that they were dreaming. He thinks that 2 people who live together, who do everything together, who are man and wife, who share similar interests, could have the same dream. I think that's rubbish, personally. And it's just one of those things. My argument to that is, science can only go so far. Science will say that they can prove that this isn't happening. And you can watch loads and loads of things, you can read loads and loads of things on science and how they know that these things aren't possible. And it's the mind and it's the brain, and we're going to talk about the brain in a little bit. But at the end of the day, science, you can watch these programs and read these books, and science will just say at the end, that's our opinion. So it's okay for someone to have the opinion that they were abducted by aliens, or they saw Bigfoot, or they saw ghosts, or a million other things are paranormal and supernatural. It's okay for science to have an opinion, but as soon as you've got an opinion that differs, there's something wrong with you, or it's because of this. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you about Disappearances in Manchester, which is my neck of the woods. In 1979. I would have been 10 or 11 in 1979. And Disappearances is the posh part of Manchester. A lady called Linda Jones was out picking flowers with her little boy and little girl. Then all of a sudden, the daughter looked up into the sky and said to her mum, Mum, the moon is coming down towards us. Quick, it's going to crash into us. So they looked up and they saw a rugby-shaped thing coming towards them. They crouched down in the long grass as they thought it was an aircraft on fire. This is what the man thought it was. It was an aircraft that was going to crash and it was on fire. For people that don't know, Disappearances isn't a million miles away from Manchester Airport. So they do get a lot of planes going around and about Disappearances. So anyway, this went over their heads. They ran up the hill, and look, when they got to the top of the hill, over the other side, there was an object that looked like a crescent moon a few feet off the ground. I've had to make notes, so that's what you can hear. Linda felt drawn towards the object, leaving her children and walking off in the direction of the UFO, or the crescent-shaped object. Obviously, if you are a parent, you would not leave your children, whatever. You wouldn't just walk off. She felt drawn towards this object. As she got really close, the light was really, really intense, and it started to burn. Well, she felt like it was burning her face. And then she was almost in a trance. Then she heard her children calling and sort of snapped out of it. Anyway, they ran home as fast as they could. When they got home, Linda's husband had arrived home and he wondered where they were. The little boy was shouting and excited, and the dad remembers that they were really, really excited and out of breath and everything else that goes along with it. And the little boy said to the dad, Daddy, you won't believe what we've just saw. And jokingly, the dad said, have you seen a spaceship? Jokingly. And the little boy said, did you see it as well? Anyway, they realised that they had lost an hour and a half to 2 hours. They couldn't account for sort of 2 hours of the time. The next morning they got up and Linda was making breakfast, and she said to her husband, would you like some toast and a cup of coffee? And Linda's husband looked at her and was absolutely gobsmacked and shocked. And he said to her, you need to go to hospital, have you seen your face? So she looked at her face, and all her face was burned. She had blisters underneath her eyes, and it was like she'd been basically sunburned really, really badly. So anyway, she couldn't remember what had happened. She just could not remember what had happened in this 2 hour period, and her children couldn't remember what had happened in this 2 hour period. So she went for hypnosis, and she wanted to be hypnotised to try and find out what had gone on. She couldn't remember, after the hypnosis, she couldn't remember anything about the hypnosis. She couldn't remember what she had said, but the session was recorded, and basically she remembers being in a white room surrounded by really, really tall creatures who had almond-shaped eyes. So we're on the grey alien type scenario here. I have looked at this from a psychological point of view, and another psychologist, Dr. Sue Blackmore, who, for people who watch YouTube a lot, she's one of the main debunkers in everything. She doesn't believe in anything, this woman. She thinks that people who are open to, people who believe, is a better word, in the paranormal and the supernatural, and believe that they've had experiences, they have a certain type of brain makeup, and it's to do with the temporal lobe, or whatever it's called in the brain. Obviously, I'm not a medical person. And basically, these people aren't making it up. They actually believe what has happened, but they will seek out other people who have had similar experiences, and that confirms to them that what they saw or what they experienced is true. I hope that makes sense. Now, from my point of view, and like I said, I really appreciate Exit Light giving me the opportunity to do this. Exit Light allowed me to do a story or an experience that happened to me when I first came out of the military. So I have had an experience. I don't want to go into it now because that's not what this is about. But it wasn't at night, it was early in the morning. I wasn't dreaming. I am stubborn as stubborn can be. I didn't seek out people to reaffirm what had happened. I know that my experience and what happened to me happened. I would have a polygraph, I would do whatever. I am 100% that my experience was real and it happened to me, and I will argue that with anybody. I don't care. So, what do you think? Do you think that this is real? Obviously, I'm not trying to change your mind, and an Exit Light isn't trying to change your mind. We're asking you a question, and we would like to know what you think. Is it possible that this could be true? And the reason I chose cases that are older cases was back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. There wasn't as much, it was a different world then. There wasn't as much going on as films and the media and pictures of grey aliens, and it wasn't that. Okay, there were movies, there's always been movies since cinema started about aliens, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. So that's why I chose older cases. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys, and we would really like to hear your feedback. Thank you.